welcome in to another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Super excited to be with you. First off, thank you. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whether you're changing diapers right now, mowing the lawn, out back, doing yard work, pulling weeds out front, changing the oil in the car, whatever it is you're doing, and listening to this podcast at the same time. Maybe you're just laying on the couch letting the kids run wild at the house. That's fine too. So I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you being here with us. Super excited for today's episode. I have my man Israel here, host of the PopsTalk podcast. Very excited to have this conversation today. So before we jump into the conversation, though, there's a little bit of business here at the top. First matter of business is just to go and support those brands that support the podcast. I know you're like, Jay, you sold out, you have brands. No, these are brands that I wear and brands that I believe in and brands that I personally support with my own personal money. We all work hard for our money, so these are brands that I support with my personal money. So with that being said, the brand I want to shout out here is Forefathers Clothing. You've probably heard me talk about them 100,000 times at this point over the last however many episodes we've been together. We've been partners for more than a year now, but Forefathers Clothing, if you want to help dad look just absolutely amazing all the time, a polo that he's going to love, a polo that he's going to wear, a polo that he's going to get compliments on, which, I mean, let's be real, men love getting compliments. We remember those things forever. So if you want to get him a stylish, lightweight, awesome looking polo that's unique to him, if he loves games, there's a gamer dad. If he loves his dog, there's a dog dad. If he loves mowing the lawn, there's one for dads who love mowing the lawn, baseball, and so many things in between, swimming, all those things. So go ahead and go down to the link in the description of the episode, my link tree. Click the Forefathers one. You put in code YoungDad, you save 20%. That's twice as much than any site coupon will give you nearly. So go there, save some money, help dad look great, and also support the podcast at the same time. So without further ado, let me tell you all a little bit about PopsTalk here. PopsTalk is a platform that Israel started with the aim of having conversations that contribute to a positive narrative of fatherhood. The aim is to inspire fathers to be involved both emotionally and physically in their parenting. Us as fathers, we're growing every day to have these conversations in an informal setting. However, PopsTalk is a platform for Israel to document moments around position parenting he can refer to ensure that he's becoming a better parent, father, and a man. So Israel, welcome to Young Dad Podcast, all the way from South Africa. This is the first time. I'm super excited that we're here together from different parts of the world. So, tell us a little bit about you, a little bit more about PopsTalk, and yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself to us.
Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for having me. This is exciting, man. I mean, when you reached out to me, I was like, what? Some recognition at last, but we've kind of like been doing this really under the carpet, just having the conversations with dads in my community, just dads around me. And, I really love saying that Pops Talk was really started, from a selfish perspective because I want to better myself as a dad, and it's important for me to associate myself with people that are really doing better at this parenting thing, but also just having a look at other dads, how the challenges that they are facing, and coming up with solutions to that. Myself, I'm 28. I'm Israel, and I was raised by a single parent. Got married last year to my beautiful wife, Lungile, and just last year we had our baby girl, who's making noise in the background right now. And I think just when we were finding out that we are pregnant and we've got this beautiful gift coming, I was like, yo, man, I grew up without a father figure, but how do I navigate this world? So it was more of starting to reach out to dads that are around me, in my community, just seeing how best they are parenting, and also just just observing people, man, and the challenges that they go through. And you kind of like realize that actually I'm not the only one who grew up without a father figure. That's kind of alarming just looking at the statistics. Just when you're looking in South Africa, where I did my research, you could can tell that about 42% of children in South Africa are living only with their mothers. That's a gap that I really just wanted to close, to say, you know what, as dads, how then do we actively become involved in our kids' lives? You know, I mean, things happen. Sometimes people are absent not because of, you know, they ran away or anything like that. It's because of life's challenges and all of that. You know, amongst that number, there is people that are not actively taking their role or playing their role. And it was more of having a conversation with those fathers as well, to say, hey, man, you know what, we need to be better as fathers. You know, how do we then build a community of involved dads? How do we, you know, change the narrative of fatherhood, man? Because just as you're having conversations with people, you kind of like see that actually the view around fatherhood, or just the view around fathers being, or active fathers, you know, it's kind of messed up. So how do we become better fathers? How do we, you know? So for now, it's really just a platform where I just, you know, just want to have healthy conversations. I just want to have those conversations that make us better as fathers, man. And ultimately, like I said myself, this being a selfish reason, you know, I just want to be a better dad and just, you know, be more and more involved, you know.
It's interesting that you bring up this topic actually fairly recently. His name's Vivek Ramaswamy. He was a presidential candidate here in the United States. He dropped out. He hosts this podcast called The Truth podcast with Vivek Ramaswamy. Yesterday, he was breaking down the U.S. foster system, and he was breaking down how many kids go through the system and just how that looks in single parent households. And there's a professor that's out there, and I don't remember where this was at, but within his classroom, his university, his first question he asks is, how many of you think it's okay to have a child out of wedlock? Most of them raise their hand, say, yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't affect me. Like, if you're born out of wedlock, it doesn't affect me at all. Okay. And then his next question was, how many of you? So that was about 70%. How many of you would have a child out of wedlock? 97% did not raise their hand. How many of you guys would want to be married before bringing a child into the world? 99% raised their hand and said, I would want to be married before bringing a child into the world, kind of thing.
100%.
But at the very beginning, they went into wedlock. So it's interesting to see, like, okay, well, it's just the context.
100%. I think even for myself, I think when we were just having a conversation with my then girlfriend, now wife, it was the thing of, we were honest from the beginning to say, you know what, we would really love to build a family, you know, we would really love to just be together from the go, and, you know, raise a family together. So it made sense to have a kid, you know, after marriage. You know, it made sense to basically bring a family, build a family, you know, once you are in marriage, because now, you know, there's issues of commitment, you know, so it's easier for somebody to just jump ship just because then they are not within a marriage system, even though they have a kid with you, you know. So I would say that, you know, that's actually a conversation that we also had, you know, just to see, test the waters, you know, before we even go far, our views around marriage and bringing kids into this world.
And I wonder if that's something, but there was a community of people surveyed in the United States, an African American community of women surveyed in the United States. And they reported on the survey that welfare, or one woman compared welfare to a rich sugar daddy, pretty much. Whereas, like, he's always going to give you what you need, but he's never going to give you a dollar more, because he doesn't want you to take that dollar and do anything with it. So because he wants to keep you coming back. Same concept with the government, how the government always wants to keep you coming back. They give you just enough to pay your bills, just enough to get food, just enough to get by. And that's it.
And once that runs out, you have to come back.
Exactly. And it keeps you coming back. It creates this need. That's who you're relying on. So then they have power in all these different ways. And so then what had happened in the United States, it was primarily post-World War II. They created all the different welfare systems, and it was just a mess. And so with these welfare systems, it essentially incentivized single parent households to be single mother households. And then you can add in the court system being able to be manipulated by women and mothers and things like that. The whole thing, it all kind of ties in, and it's all unfortunate because it's the family's kind of been destroyed here in America, at least. It's not cool to come from a two-parent household. It's cool to come from a single-parent household. It's cool to go and be a single parent of some type of way. For women to be single mothers, because that shows that you're powerful and you're better and you're just better off and all these things. So I don't get it. I don't get it.
No, man, I think it's just for me to comment on the system around here in South Africa. It's not necessarily around a single parent household or but there's a grant system here, which is kind of like achieving a similar purpose, I think, with what you're talking about, because now what that system does, it creates that narrative of being overly dependent on the government to an extent of you have to keep going to them and they give you this grant, a monthly grant. I think that's the incentive you're talking about, a monthly grant. And then once it runs out, that actually, it's coming back again at the end of the month. So it's more like they're creating that mindset of you being dependent on them over and over and over again. So I would say that it's kind of like not structured within, the single parenting system or whatnot, but it's somewhat the same in a way.
See, it's interesting. It peaked in 2005, these ratios of single parent households, and it's kind of been fairly close, but it's down quite a bit in 2023. Well, 2023 versus 2005. So in 2005, we're looking at 17.25 million single mother households, while looking at 3.5 million single father households in the United States in 2005. Fast forward 10 years from that, we're looking at 17 million even single mother households, and then 2.7 single father households. 2020, we're looking at 15.3 million, 3.2 million. So it dropped pretty significantly in 2020, shot back up in 21, 22. Now in 2023, we kind of got back to that 2020 level, to where we're looking at about 15.1 million single mother households and 3.05 million single father households. So these numbers are interesting. It just shows you that there's a 3x gap in these kind of things. But you look at this, you look at these numbers, and you have to ask, of these single father to single mother households, the 12 million difference that are mother only, of those 12 million, how many of those fathers really want to see their kids, want to be involved, want to try to be involved, but aren't allowed to be involved? But then let's take a deeper look. If we look at those 12 million who aren't involved, those are the men who are contributing to the bad ratios, not the bad ratios, but the sad reality ratios in the United States. Those are the men who are saying, F it, I've got nothing to live for, I'm going to take my life. Taking their life. Bad and depression and anxiety and just really struggling overall.
100%. I think that's a sad reality. I mean, it goes to show how our society is structured, just across the world, not only in the United States, and also here locally. We do have men that do actually, so the number that you've just, mentioned, even locally, in South Africa, you get that there are parents or there are single mothers that are, single mothers, not because the man doesn't want to be involved. It's mainly because of life sad realities, and that's it. It becomes an issue, it becomes an issue because now the conversations are not being had to say, how do we then close that gap? How do we then maybe create a conversation to make sure that the men that are not present but would or have that desire to be present are actually present, you know? And then there is those that are really, really like, you know what, I don't care, you know, and you find that the mother is raising the kids all on her own, and the man is present. Sometimes the man is even next door, you know, and the man is even next door, and he doesn't give a, you know, he doesn't really care about that, and that again comes back to us having those conversations of, hey, man, as men, we need to really do better. So when you're looking at the conversation that needs to be had when these numbers are concerned, there's a conversation of, hey, you know what, how do we get better involved as men? But also, as men, what are you doing to be involved? Because it's not like there are things that are hindering you. You just decided, I'm not going to get involved. And let's find out, let's unpack a bit more. What are those reasons? You know, what's standing in your way as a man to get involved, you know?
And what is
That's true.
it's the legal system that's standing in the way. And
100%.
sometimes it's the man himself. And it can be any I would so I looked it up here, and I just looked it up. It says as of 2016, so I don't know how accurate this is, but in South Africa, it said most children age 0 to 6, so about 47.6% lived in single parent families.
Yes.
45% of that lived with their mothers, and 2% lived with the highest percentage of children who live with their mothers were children under the age of 1, so 52.3, and children age 1 at 49.7%. So, and then I'm looking at another stat here. This one is as of 2023. It says roughly 4 in 10 children in South Africa grow up in single parent homes, and roughly the same proportion of current parents are single parents. The survey found. So it's about 40% right now, which I don't know how many children are in the United States, but those numbers sound pretty similar to the numbers I mentioned.
So the study that I was looking at, you know, that I once came across, you know, just highlighted that 42% of children live with only their mothers, and 21% does not live with their, you know, with their parents at all, you know. And obviously, this is now a situation where, you know, parents are deceased, and you know, which is a sad reality here in South Africa, because you find those households where the you know, the head of the house, it's actually a kid themselves or a child themselves, you know, and they fall into that 21%, you know, and fewer than 4 in 10 children live with their fathers, you know, which is the gap that that was also highlighted by this study, you know, which is a sad reality, really. And I think it's making these conversations much more and more and more important every single day, you know.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. It begs the question: be involved in your kid's life. Like it's almost. There's also parts of it that are glamorized across media and whatnot. That it's okay. It's not a big deal if you're not involved in your kid's life. Like no big deal. Like it's fine, bro. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, man.
Like you can just pay some money out of your check and you can go and live your life. No one cares.
Yeah, that's why, and that's where you find these cases where, you know, people are fighting for like child support. You know, I mean, it's great to have that conversation of child support, and you know, have the men involved. Can't we fight another fight of, you know, actually, you know what, I see the child support, you know, but can't you be a little bit more involved, you know, beyond the check that you know, ripping off every month and sending through to that woman who's living with your kids, you know, what are you doing a bit more? Because now we find these legal fights where the lady takes a guy to court, you know, trying to fight for child support and all of that. But never ever have I had any conversation being actually beyond that paycheck, beyond that support financially, you know, then do we get you more involved? Because it wouldn't make sense. Well, it doesn't make sense for me to just be financially involved and just neglect the other aspect, because there is the financial aspect to a child, but there's also just that emotional and that them actually feeling the presence of the father, because what that does is in the long run it creates a broken society in a way, because now you were involved financially, that's cool, but were you involved emotionally in this person's lives, physically, were you showing up, to kind of like be that support system that they need? And if there was any gap in that, doesn't matter how many billions you've, pumped up into their lives, but there is a gap emotionally that, sometimes it's even, we even see people turning to alcohol or drugs because there is literally a void that they are trying to, close, or just a space that, should have been filled by a father, or should have been filled by both parents being present. I think in my journey, I've had to admit that in as much as the woman who raised me, my mother, what did an exceptional job, in as much as she did a very beautiful job raising me, but it would have been unfair for me to say to her she should have played a father figure role, in me. And it's only after growing up that I realized that actually there are some lessons that I would have learned from a father figure. There are some lessons that I would have, benefited from a male figure that, I could take into my marriage, I could take into my fatherhood journey. Yeah, man, I think, can you still hear me?
Yeah, no, I can. Yep, we're good.
Okay.
We're good. I'm just listening. I'm just curious because I don't. I'm curious here. Where did your desire to be a good father come from? To be involved, to be present, to be there for your child, with really having that example. Like, who were your male figures growing up that were there, that were kind of an example to you of like, okay, this is what a man does, this is what we're supposed to be. Who were those role models for you, and then what keeps you on the path here today?
I think my desire for being a great dad, and just for playing an active role, both emotionally and physically in my child life, really comes from myself as I was growing up, just from my background. As I mentioned, growing up without a father, all of that, it actually made me have conversations with myself to say, I imagine how it would have been like to have my dad around. What are the things that I would have done if my dad was around? Sort of all of that, the desire of having a dad growing up, I honestly saw it as a perfect thing to kind of like project onto my kids, or just pour onto my kids, because I'm just like, you know what? I didn't have these moments with my dad. I'm gonna have these moments with my kids. I didn't, spend so many, be it soccer matches with my dad, or all of these moments that are really precious with my dad. So I'm going to make sure that whatever moment that my child requires me to be in their lives, or whatever moment my child goes through, I'm going to be right there as that support structure. It's mainly coming from not having that. You really want your kids to not experience that. But to be fair, actually just growing up within the community, I had male figures who were from church, but it would be that once in a while situation where you're like, okay, cool, you know what? I'm going through something. Can I have a conversation? And at times you never really have like an open and honest conversation with them. It's just a once in a while kind of situation. Those were actually helpful, for that purpose, for that time. But you grow up with that thing of, I wish I can have more of this. I wish I can have this. Stay with me, be present all the time. And so because of that, I think I grew up with the mindset of, you know what, I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna be much more involved. I'm gonna be present. I'm just gonna show up, man. I'm gonna enjoy every single moment, you know. So that's where really that passion is coming from. That passion is coming from not having, and you know, you're just like, you know what? I don't want my kids to experience that. You know, I want them to actually have what I didn't have. You know, I think in as much as you know, it's just to make an example, you know, when you grow up lacking financially, you know, you work so hard that your kids never lack again, you know. It's exactly the same with me. Like when you grow up without that father figure presence, you know, you work so hard and you just, that passion just boils within you to say, you know what, I'm going to build a different narrative for my kids. I'm going to build a different narrative for my community, you know?
Oh, I hear you. So what is that narrative that, you know,
So that it's really a narrative of I grew up with a protector. It's a narrative of I could have an honest conversation with my dad. You know, it's a narrative of I never lacked emotionally. I never lacked physically. I was always protected. You know, because now when you're just looking globally, you know, you people that go through abuse, people that go through be it physical or emotional abuse, some of it, at the root cause of it, it's because of, you know what, having grown without a father figure present, that they end up looking for it elsewhere. You understand? And when you're looking for it elsewhere, you know, in for, especially for girls, it becomes so dangerous because they look for it in relationships, and there it's a different kind of setting. You can't be looking for a father figure there. You understand? So it's really a narrative of I grew up in a household where my dad was my protector, where, you know, I could have a conversation, an honest conversation with my dad. You know, I could express myself. I could, you know, really feel protected. You know, I never lacked emotionally because, again, you know, that gap of not having an emotional support system from a father, you know, ends up being projected elsewhere. So that's really the narrative that I'm trying to have all of us build, you know, specifically just from a dad perspective, you know, just from a passionate dad perspective.
that's so important to
100%.
that narrative for our children so that they can have those honest, open conversations. And it's so important, especially as little baby girls turn into young women and then into women and whatnot to
100%.
have that because your
100%.
generational
So,
issues will be projected into their relationships, and that can lead to so many things because they don't know how they're supposed to be treated by men, how they're supposed to be looked at by men, the
100%.
attention that is healthy from men. So they just don't know these things.
100%, 100%. And you know, even for men, you know, like I said, from my perspective, for myself, or in my journey growing up as a man, you know, now being married, I'm actually seeing more and more of that need of having a father figure around, because, you know, I'm like, actually, there are conversations that I would have, you know, loved to have had with the father figure about marriage, or about just building with someone, actively building with someone. That's where you get to see the gap that, you know what, if you don't have these conversations growing up, you know, some things you are never aware of, or some things, you know, you question from top going down, you know, whereas you should have built that foundation up, you know, but because there wasn't anyone helping you in your journey growing up, you know, you now having those conversations here that you should have had them here, you know, which is an enlightening experience on its own, because it makes you want to be a better person, not only for yourself now that you are more aware, but it makes you want to build a kind of like that environment, either for your kids or for whoever that you are around. Be that role model for them as well as a father figure to them as well.
Most definitely. And that to look to and to remember, okay,
100%.
what a husband does. This is what a good relationship looks like. This is because granted, there was no example really. So that's a plus in itself because at least there wasn't bad examples,
100%.
That could have been even worse. But, you know, but you can't really look back and be like, man, I wonder, like, how am I supposed to treat this woman? How am I supposed to interact with her? How am I supposed to be with her? Like, obviously, you know how to interact with your mom and with her, so you know how to treat a woman in general, but you didn't see it from like two adults interacting. So you never had that like example and things like that. And that can be super difficult because it's like, okay, well, I don't like you're cool, you're cute. What do we do? We just like dinner? Do we like go to bed together? Like kind of thing.
Like learning
What do we do? Kind of thing. Like what are we supposed to be doing right now?
100%. So it's like learning a whole new, skill all over again because, you know, and I mean, I like what you're saying about, not having bad examples, to look up to. I think also that's why our platforms are much more important because now we trying to be that perfect example, or not really perfect, but obviously just an example to look up to say, actually, there is Izzi, there is, Jay, but, based on how they're conducting themselves as married men or as fathers, I can see a possibility, of positive fatherhood existing. And, so yeah, man, like right now it's just about, building that narrative.
So what are some of those things that you did take from being raised by a single mother? What are some of those things that you can 100% say, like, okay, this is something I gained from mom that now plays into my parenting, to being a father, to being a husband? What are a few of those things? Let's shout out mom for a minute.
So it's I think it's really being involved. It's really being involved because my mother was that woman, is that woman actually, very involved, like emotionally, very involved in just raising me as a child. Even my sister right now with her, I see her being much more and more involved emotionally. So I would say that from that perspective, there was never ever that lack. I was always covered from that, and just having her show up, man. Like my mom is that woman that really, really does show up. So it's those little things that I'm taking from her. It's those little things that I'm like, you know what? These are the things that I'm infusing in my journey as a man, as to both my wife and both and my kids. These are just just being much more involved emotionally, being present, and with my wife, I think it's having those conversations, man. Those tough conversations that I know that had I had a male figure, or had I, it's those conversations that you like, what, I never thought I would need to have a conversation like this. So, of course, with my mother, we never touched that side. But from her, I'm really taking that emotive, that presence, always being present, always showing up for me.
That's beautiful. And
100%.
there when they you can't
Exactly.
like yes, you have to be an adult and you have to be cordial with your ex. You can't be making a scene and stuff because that's gonna make it worse. But if you can just be, because you're not there for that other person, you're not there for your ex, you're not there for anyone else. You're there for your child, and your child just wants
100%.
your
100%. Like I.
daddy. Daddy, you're gonna be at my dance recital this weekend. I don't know, sweetie. I don't have you this weekend. All your kid hears, I'm not gonna be there. They don't know the reasons why. They don't understand the bigger thing because that's
Exactly.
that they need to protecting them. All that they're worried about is whether you're going to be there.
Mm.
If
I like what you're saying.
yeah, if you're letting your feelings about your ex getting your way of being there for your kids, and you got bigger problems. But
100%.
You can show up for your kid regardless of who's going to be there, if she's there, or whatever. She or he's there, because we have women that listen to this too. So if they're there and you're like, oh man, well, sorry kid, I can't be there. It's not my parenting time, kind of thing. Like, oh, you have
Yeah.
to do, then hang out and watch me perform and do this thing I worked really hard at. Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
I really like what you're saying with regards to the feelings, that they'll always remember how you make them feel. They'll always remember those special moments. I look at it with me, it's literally just in my head, like, I'm such a moments person that, I hold on to moments that I have, or moments that are really special to me. So you can imagine a kid growing up with those moments, and seeing you being present, seeing you as a dad, just being much more, showing up at, doing your best to show up, they would literally just hold on to those moments where actually I know my dad shows up, because, if I need him here, he's there. If I need him to do that, he's doing that. So I like what you're saying about, just them holding on to the feeling, and just, the moments that we create or just be a part of in their lives.
The most important thing. It's important to just be there in their life. It's important to just be someone else. Maybe it was a sporting thing. Maybe it was like a more male dominant thing, and you look out in the crowd or the bleachers, or they're on the soccer field or whatever, and you see all these other dads cheering for their kids, cheering for their sons, and you're just like, hi mom. It feels great. Like, it's great that she's still there, right? But at this the same. Not the same. It's not, there's something missing even as a child, and so that's important to me too, as a father, for my daughters to know, like, I'm always gonna try to show up, regardless of who else is there. Like, I'm gonna be there, because you're there, and someone else is there. Guess what? You do not have to interact with him.
100%. I think I can, just go back, when I was at a youth service, just a couple of years ago, in my youth days or teenage days. I remember this one day, our youth Friday nights. We were supposed to bring our fathers, or just a father figure. And because I lived with my mom at that time and other uncles, but I wasn't like really just, it's the uncles that lived within our apartment, but it's not really somebody that you really that close with. And I remember my youth pastors telling me that, yo, man, don't worry, I'm here. Don't worry, I'm here. And of course, it wasn't just me. It was just also just a couple of kids, but also having that feeling of, hey, man, it would have been great if, we all had our dads here, but of course, life tend to have its own plans. So.
And one thing, there was a daddy-daughter dance or a mother-son dance or things like that. Like, I never really got to experience those growing up. And so, but I never want my daughters to look back and say, yeah, dad wasn't there, so I never got to go to those daddy-daughter dances. My friends would talk about them, and I wanted to go, but I couldn't go, kind of thing. Like, I never want my daughters to have that feeling of, I can't do something because I don't meet this, like, requirement of having a dad, kind of thing. And so it's important to me to always make sure that I meet those commitments and keep those commitments, whether it's taking off some time at work or moving things around on my schedule, but to always try to make it work so that I'm there. Because those are the things that are important.
100%.
Those are the things that they remember.
100%.
They'll hold on to.
100%. And it's not everyone that will always treat it as important as you are, because not everybody understands why you see the need to show up, but you are literally showing up because this is my responsibility as a dad. But I mean, like, we have, like, not every no, I doubt it's everyone, but there's instances where you find that people make work as an excuse for not showing up to, like, parents thing at school, but you know what, if it's important, you will get there. If it's important to you, you will make sure that, you drop whatever it is. But of course, that's a subjective view.
It's important. Like, if but they're saying to figure work out because guess what? Work is just work. Work shouldn't precedent.
It's not going anywhere. Yeah.
No, guess what? Maybe you need to work a couple extra hours the day before. Maybe you need to stay later that day. Maybe you need to stay later in the week or earlier in the week or whatever to make it work. Or maybe you just need to move your break schedule around, your lunch around, and you have to communicate with your boss and your supervisor because that's so hard to do. Because guess what? Most people will understand, especially if they have kids. You go to talk to your boss and hey boss, I on Thursday at 2:30 I need to leave because I got to be at my kid's school at 3 o'clock for this thing. I'll be gone for an hour, and your boss will most likely okay, cool. And if you guys need to make a plan to come up with time to make up or to fill in those hours, kind of thing, guess what? You'll fill them in. You'll make it work. If it's important,
100%.
I know
If it's important. No, that's really true. If it's important, you will make it work. You will show up. I think that's one thing that we all need to learn as people, that there are things you can never compromise. You know, there are things that you can never really compromise. And for me, it's this side of the world. It's this side of my life. You know. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Well, before we wrap up here, I do just want to give another plug here at the end of the show. And you've heard me talk about these friends of mine, these beautiful people, this beautiful app, the June app, Joon. The June app is great for if you have a child who struggles with behaviors, routines, habits, creating those habits, building those routines, whether they're on the spectrum or they have ADHD or they just struggle in general in these areas. The June app is going to be your new best friend. The June app's fantastic. You use the June app, you as a parent, and the parent side of the app, and there's a kid side of the app. The kids will love it because it's a video game, it's coins, it's instant gratification, it's earning, it's checking boxes, it's being on the screen. What more can a kid ask for? There's mini games within the game, super cool, super interactive. But the parent side of the app is even better. You get to assign the tasks that you want to give to your children. You get to assign them the order, the days of the week. You have full control over the tasks that they're being given, and it's fantastic. You then take the app, and then they get assigned these tasks. Your children go and complete the tasks, but guess what? They're not done yet. They don't earn those coins quite yet. They have to go back, and you have to go in and double check and verify, are these coins is this task complete? It's halfway done, it's barely done. Okay, cool. You get half your coins then for this task. And then your kid will be devastated, and they'll be like, no, let me fix it, kind of thing, so that they can get their full earning of coins. So as a parent, you still have full control of making sure that they do these tasks up to your standards in the order you want them to do them in, at the times you want them doing them. You can break them into morning, afternoon, evening. It's super great for kids who may struggle with those habits and routines. So you can get June for free by following the link in the description, downloading it from your app store, using it, and then if you love it, after your free trial ends, you can use the code YoungDad, and you'll earn some money off of your annual subscription. And it's a great deal. It's a great tool to use with your children. So with that, Izzi, let's see. Let's end us here. Thinking of, let's take this back of, I'm trying to phrase this, so I'm struggling. Thinking of a young dad, like very young. So when I became a dad, I was 22 years old. I was super young. And so for you, kind of being where you are now, your platform, things that you've learned, what advice would you have for the young dad who's super young, 20, 21 years old, 2022, just kind of getting started, getting life ahead of him, brand new baby, he's scared out of his mind. What's a couple pieces of advice that you would give to him?
Hey man, I think my advice is that you are here now, firstly, and it's going to be a lot of you're going to go through ups and downs and moments that you understand, moments that you don't understand, but never let those moments taint how you experience being a dad. Because just like life, man, it's going to have its own ups and downs, but what's important to you is this person that you've brought into this world, and what kind of environment you want to create for them, what kind of experiences you want to give to them, what kind of moments do you want to share with them, so in as much as it's scary, it's understandable, but remember, you're here now, and from here onwards, just expect to be the best you can be, the best you can be. And there isn't really a right or wrong way to be a parent. What's important is to learn. What's important is to see, adapt, and see or reject new ways of being of parenting. So just enjoy the ride, man. It's going to be up and down. Never ever let it taint how you view the experience that you're getting out of this.
Been incredible to
Man.
keep up with a little bit more of you, and to connect with you further if they choose to do so.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's really been fun and insightful, just a little bit different as well. So I really, really appreciate that. Appreciate the platform. So Pops Talk, it's Pops Talk on Instagram, Pops Talk on TikTok, Pops Talk on YouTube, and it's really just a conversation, a platform where I'm looking forward to documenting just experiences that dads are having, and seeing how we can all as parents contribute to a positive narrative of parenting, from a fatherhood perspective. And like I said, just from a selfish perspective, I'm really looking forward to seeing how everyone does this parenting thing so that I can be a better dad. I can be, an exceptional dad to my kids. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for this.
Got this conversation with us today. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It definitely helps the podcast more than you think. If you're over on Spotify, a follow, a 5-star help a ton. If you're listening on Apple, a 5-star and a review helps a ton. If you're listening on any other podcasting platform that's not those two, I don't know what you can do, but whatever you can do helps the podcast a ton. So with that, do your thing, support the podcast, sign up for the email newsletter, all those things, and tune in next time for another great episode of the Young Dad Podcast.